So my Porsche 928 is an 83, and mine is like right before the cutoff, even though the VIN shows it as being after the cutoff. So basically 83 was an interchange year, and halfway through the year they changed a lot of stuff on it. Mine says it's supposed to be a later model, but it's not. It's an early model. The later models were manufactured up to February. Mine was manufactured up to April, but still has all the early stuff on it. Anyway, on the older 928s, I think it's pre-85, the front struts are not adjustable. And you can see I've got these big 18s on here. I love these wheels. I love the way these fit. These are KSWs. I had old BBSs on here and they were kind of beat to death. You can see I've already got it jacked up on stands. But I did the struts on this side, or the coilovers, and it was a pain in the ass. So I'm going to show you how to do it the easy-ish way, because I went through every forum that I could find on Renlist and Pelican and watched a couple other YouTube videos. None of it was informative on the older ones. Everybody was dealing with 85 and on. So the difference between them, so this is the original shock that came out of it, and you can see that this is non-adjustable, and these can be tapped off and put on new shocks, so you know all the shock numbers are the same for every year, but I wanted the adjustability of having, you know, the whole coilover effect. So basically what happened was a friend of mine gave me a set of these that were out of his 85 that were factory. Well, actually it was these, and I tore them apart, and it was really easy to do. So the only thing you need is this spring compressor, and you need it on both sides of the shock. What I did is I bought these off of Amazon for like, I don't know, I think they were 15 bucks, and I cut them down. I took a good solid 5 inches off of them, and that just made it easier to use. It doesn't actually do anything to the spring compressor itself, but it made it easier to use so the bar wasn't sticking out so far. And what I did was I kind of rebuilt these first, which made my life a little bit easier. But you compress the spring down to where this top cap just comes loose. Then after that happens, you unbolt it from right here, just using an adjustable wrench on this end, 19mm bolt. You just unscrew that off. The whole top piece comes off. Then inside here, it had these bushings. And let me show you the original bushings. These were just crap. Here they are right here. We don't need the leaf. Here's the original bushings that were in there. And you can see that these are just shot. And these plates are garbage too. These things were cracked and shot. So anyway, I bought the Sachs shocks because I can't afford to do Bilstein coilovers all the way around. The Bilsteins would run me $1,200 to do the entire car. These are $100 each. So I'm fine with the factory ride. I'm not going to be racing this car or anything. It's an automatic, so it's just a cruiser. But anyway, what I ended up doing is the shock itself comes with the new washer that you can see right there. You can kind of see it. And then I got, you can't see it, that are stuffed up in here, the rear shock bumpers off of, for the rear 928. And those are readily available through Auto House AZ. That's where I ended up getting these. Those were like 17 bucks. They're taller than these. And I wanted to go a little taller because I'm running 18s. So that way I didn't have to worry about, you know, slamming down too hard. I've had these 18s on here actually now for, I don't know, about a year. I haven't noticed any rubbing or anything, but just to be on the safe side, why not put a little taller bumper in there, just because these wheels are slightly larger. Anyway, compress the spring, take the top piece off, then after you remove the whole thing, this flange right here needs to be tapped off. Now I end up having to go back and use the original flange because when I tried to tap on the new flange that came with the shock, it went flying somewhere in this yard. You can see this is all rocks and dirt, and so yeah, I wasn't going to find it, so I just grabbed the original one and tapped it back on. It fit fine. The coilover part, I made sure to work this so it's free first. So I ended up having to tap it with a hammer to get it to work. And then the other tool I bought on Amazon here was this. And this is a coilover wrench. And this actually works great for the front and the back, and it fits in there pretty well. And it's better to do it right on top, but both sides actually work on this. So it just depends on which one grabs better for what you're doing. Once they're on there, it's very easy to rotate. So basically I just knocked this adjuster so it was free, and then sprayed it down with some nut blaster, and then got it to the point where it was spinning really easy, then leveled it out, then tapped it off with a hammer off of these shocks, so you can see how it just press fits on there, and it taps off really easy. I thought it was going to be much worse. And then just slid it on the new one, making sure that it's going in the right direction, because there is a way that goes on there. You tap that back on, you put the lower spring plate back on. It's just a big gigantic washer, and then you tap this on, and then you put on your plastic washer, and then your bumper shock, then your shock cover, and then you slide the spring back over it with the top and squeeze it down. Now the tops are all the same from year to year. Now one thing I made sure I did, and you can see this if they're side by side, is that my shock lengths right now are the exact same height. So that should give me the same ride height. Now the problem with the old ones is, you see how much more spring is right here? This makes it fairly easy to get out. This makes it a total nightmare. So let's go back to the other side here. So this is the early 928 front shocks that nobody ever talks about. And the reason for it is because they're a pain in the ass. Now, I have heard all kinds of different ways of doing this. So the first one was to go in to the control arms. You can see it's bolted onto the body right here on both sides. Now, a lot of people say go into the engine compartment and you loosen that up to where it almost falls out, and then you can pull it out. That's one way of doing it. The other way that I saw was another video where these guys adjusted it from down here. The only problem is these are alignment bolts, so the minute that you undo these, you have to redo your entire alignment. And then I read online that somebody just removed the lower control arm, and then in the manual it says that you actually have to remove the upper control arm. So on the other side, what I ended up doing was undoing the bolt that holds down this ball joint and popping off the upper control arm, leaving all this regular, and then undoing the 4 bolts that hold this lower control arm on, and then the 2 bolts that hold that bracket on. So I think I'm going to do the same thing on this side, but I don't know that I actually need to undo this ball joint to do it. It was just easier. So now I'm going to go ahead and fight with this thing to get it off. Now, tools wise, 9mm and 17mm, except for 18mm on the top of the shock towers, and then under the hood on this side it's a little problematic. So let me just show you here. This gets a little tight. So my upper mount's right here, so I need a 10mm to remove this to get this out of the way, because one of the bolts is hidden back here. So there's 3. There's one right there, one under here, and then one right behind this line right here. So I need to be able to get to those. You can see them on this side much easier. That part's going to be a breeze. I'm not too worried about that. But I'm going to try something new and different on this side. And so I think the way I'm going to attack this, it's a little unorthodox, but I am leaving this ball joint attached, I'm just going to pull out the bolt that's down here. I already undid it. So on this side, I'm going to disconnect the sway bar here. That's 19 millimeter down on this lower part. And then I'm going to pull this bolt out. Then I'm going to come in and undo these 4 bolts right here, here, and here, and here to drop this lower control arm. Because once you do that, it'll allow me to do 2 things. A, I don't have to realign, but I probably will have to do a minor camber adjustment if I adjust the height. And probably a toe adjustment, but not a major realignment. The other thing is it'll allow me to check those bushings, but most likely they'll be in great shape because the other side was in great shape, so I'm not too worried about it. Now, there's also 2 17 millimeter bolts that hold this bracket on. So I'm going to loosen this one and take this one out. That way when I undo these 2 bolts, this thing can just swing down. So that is the goal. And then I've got a floor jack here. The floor jack's going to allow me to just kind of set this onto the floor jack so I can kind of move it around, because there's still going to be a lot of this stuff attached to it. But honestly, I think this is going to be the easiest way to do this. It took a while to figure the other side out, but once I did, it worked. So, except I took out the upper ball joint, which I didn't need to. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is just loosen these 2 bolts. That just takes the tension off of these bushings, because this, once it's out, is really stiff. Loosen those up a little bit, you get a little bit more movement. So, now before you guys start bitching about me leaning over the car without a towel on the fender, I am wearing the cotton shirt and no belt, and the cotton shirt's hanging out over everything, so soft fabric against the car. I should have a towel in here, but now I can get to my bolts. They're really hard to see, but I can get to them. So now I'm going to cheat. This should be 18 millimeter, but instead I'm using 11/16 because it sits on there a little looser and allow me to go in at kind of a obscure angle. On later 928s, 85 and later, that have the adjustable shocks, you should just be able to take out the liner that's in here, undo these 3 bolts, undo this bolt, and wiggle the shock out. Because in 83, because this is so much, it's an inch taller, nothing fits. It's a freaking nightmare. Ugh. God, those rather tight. Shock back in the hole, like so. Lift up this arm to that point. Hold this out of the way. But now, with this control arm out of the way, you can see in here, now I should just be able to twist it until it falls out. That's the goal. Helps if you go the right direction. Let me grab the trusty hammer, pry this thing up in here somehow. That will hold long enough for me to get a bolt in on the top. Okay, the top is officially pegged in there, so I can remove my hammer now. Everything's dangling. So now I got to go in and align this stuff up. So I got to line my shock, get that bottom set straight. So I'm going to use the bolt that came out of it. And we're just going to jam the bolt in here and rotate this thing. Set the camera down here. This one doesn't want to turn. There we go. It's almost back in position. So at this point, I'm going to try to fully mount this lower shock bushing to the control arm and get all that set up. Not tightened, but at least get the bolt through it. Use the little thing up just a touch. Screwdriver. Let's kind of help line this thing up here. That went all the way through with ease. So you'll see how that's dangling back here. So that's what I'm left with. So at this point, it's okay to actually mount up the lower control arm, and I'm going to use the jack to set that into place. Alright, at this point it's pretty easy. All you have to do is bolt everything back together and tighten it back up. And when you get to the hoop on the lower control arm, and it's this thing, then all you do is tighten it a little bit, like make sure it's snug, but don't tighten it all the way down. At this point, you're going to want to drive the car for probably 4 miles or so just to get the suspension to settle, and then go ahead and tighten that down. And the same thing goes for the upper control arm. Go ahead and tighten it down, but not all the way down, and then after that same 4 miles, stick your hand back there and just tighten it down with a wrench. That way, this will eliminate any squeaky suspension that you may have and any kind of binding. I can totally adjust these down. This looks ridiculous. I just pulled it up, pulled the jack stands from underneath it, and it looks like a rally car from the front. Yeah, I need 2 finger height on the top of that, and I guess I got some adjusting to do. So I set those adjusters pretty high. I think I can bring those down a solid inch. So we'll try that first and see what happens there. What I ended up doing was having to adjust these adjusters almost all the way down. This took a while, and what I should have done was set the spring to its lowest setting before I put everything together instead of having everything leveled out. So now I know, won't make that mistake again. Hopefully you don't either if you're watching this. But yeah, good times. Success. I actually got the ride height that I wanted. I think it looks pretty good. So now that I've driven this 10 miles, I've been able to tighten everything back down, and I am really happy with these results. I think this is the exact look that I was going for. Nothing rubs, there's no bottoming out. It's just very clean, and you know, it was a lot of work to get to this point, but now if I ever need to change these shocks out again, it'll be much easier to do. So it was worth the effort to do this, but not a fun job to do. Hope you guys liked this video. Leave me a comment, subscribe to my channel for more information like this, and otherwise we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.